Hi, last week I had a lovely patient say something to me that really caused me to commiserate as a human, but also to think as a doctor. And so I just wanted to share that with you. She said, "Is it so bad? I just want to crochet and lay on my couch and watch TV. Why can't I do that?" And as a person, it made me laugh because I understand what it's like to want to be able to do things that your body doesn't like. But the doctor in me really felt like I owed her an explanation to help her understand why her body won't cooperate with those wishes, right? And really, the bottom line is that no matter how many adjustments I give her, she's still not going to be able to sit comfortably without her neck or back hurting and crochet without her hands going numb if we don't address a few other factors and get some things online, okay? So because many of my patients can probably relate to that frustration of being in pain and feeling limited by it, I thought I'd use this as an opportunity to kind of teach us all a little bit about pain, why it happens, and the strategies to help you get out of this, okay? Pain is a sensation of discomfort. We have lots of different sensations in our body, right? We can feel pressure, we can feel touch, we can feel hot, we can feel cold, you get numbness or tingling, right? Those are all sensations that we feel. Now, it's our nerves that transmit those sensations to the body. When you think about a nerve, I want you to imagine that it's kind of like a ponytail, right? It's a little bundle of fibers, okay? Each one of those fibers in a ponytail is an individual strand of hair. But in your nerves, each individual nerve fiber has a different job to do. There's different categories and types of nerve fibers, right? And different categories of nerve fibers have different functions. Some transmit pressure, some transmit motor function to make your muscles contract, some transmit cold or heat or pressure or vibration or pain, right? And as far as pain, there's lots of different painful sensations, right? Like we have sharp, shooting, dull, aching, severe pains, minor aches, right? We have lots of different kinds of pain fibers. Generally, we refer to pain fibers in the nerves as nociceptors. So what makes a nociceptor fire? Well, generally, it gets sensitized and sends a message when it receives a certain stimulus. And that stimulus is often a chemical soup that happens when our body is injured or tissue is destroyed, okay? I've written a little notes here to make sure that I cover this the way I want to. So let me just see if I'm on track, okay? So, pain is that physical sensation that results from a complicated dance, okay? You have an injury or tissue damage at a site. Fluids and chemicals tend to leak into the area. The chemicals that are released attach and bind to those nociceptor fibers, which is like triggers that sensory information then to go into the spinal cord up to the brain, and your brain goes and registers that stimulus or that sense of pain and localizes it to where it goes in the body, right? Generally, painful stimuli aren't there to hurt us or to frustrate us or to hold us back. They are there to help us understand that there's something wrong in the body and to start that cascade of inflammation. That's the first step in the healing process, and also to clue us into the fact that there's damage there and prevent us from continuing to do something that's irritating to the body. Classic example for me is if you wear a poorly fitting shoe, right? Like you get new shoes, you go to a wedding, get something really cute, you put it on the first time, and by the end of the day or after enough wear and tear, you get that blister, right? Because that shoe just rubbed. And what happens when you form a blister is that you get tissue damage, like you've worn a hole through some of that skin, right? What happens when you have a blister? It swells up, it fills with fluid. That fluid is full of chemicals that stimulate white blood cells, repair cells to come into the area, but it also fires up those nociceptors and makes us aware that there's a problem here that we have to fix, right? So generally, like I said, the body tries to do things to clue us in to imbalances or things that aren't right so that we can fix them. So like in the example for my patient, like, why can't you just sit and crochet? Like, what is the problem there? Well, the truth is that when some people have pain constantly all throughout their day, or they have recurrent episodes of an injury, it's that the pain is getting triggered by an innocuous stimuli, something that shouldn't be causing the damage that it did. Or sometimes because there's maybe too much static and too much misinformation or unhelpful stimulation happening for those nerves in the area that it's causing those signals to get sent and not be sent and received properly, right? Things that can contribute to that communication breakdown and cause that unhelpful, painful triggering are stuff like having an impaired ability to heal due to lack of rest or having constant, continuous, repetitive strain in the area. So, like I said, thinking of that blister example from bad shoes, the first step to healing it is taking those shoes off. If you keep wearing that same shoe that's worn a blister day after day, it's not going to heal well and it's going to continue to hurt. So if the trigger in this case is sitting on a couch that lacks support and good posture, it's going to inflame those joints and tissues, right? Or if it's crocheting and using a needle and a hook over and over, you're going to continue to build up that inflammation and swelling through that wrist canal. That's going to make your hand go numb. You need to get some rest in there and stop the irritation so that things can get better, right? Another reason why we maybe don't heal as well is that we're not getting enough nutrients in through our dietary habits or the foods that we eat to support that tissue repair and rebuilding process. We basically, as humans, are what we eat, right? And so if you look at the diet of foods you supply yourself to build repair parts with, like, are you giving yourself good quality and variety of repair parts? If we were building a house out of our diet, like, are you building a cardboard, poorly constructed vessel, or are you giving yourself high quality lumber and building materials so that you can heal more completely? Because that will bear into how well you deal with those repetitive stresses and how quickly you recover from those when given appropriate rest, okay? And then another issue is poorly coordinated movements. They can increase stress because you need conditioning and rehab. So I'll often say, if you have an acute injury, like you fall down and you twist your ankle and it swells up really big, and then you wrap it with a nice bandage to get some of that swelling and inflammation away, but in the meanwhile, you're kind of hobbling on it and limping. Limping is a preventative measure that happens so that we don't continue to strain and move through those irritated tissues, right? It's an altered gait and usage pattern though. So while we're recovering from that acute injury, the muscles that we use as we walk and dorsiflex, they're not getting used. They lose some of their strength. They lose some of that connection from their brain because the brain, recognizing there was an injury, went down and turned off that muscle. It was like, we're not going to use you. We're going to give you time to recover. Sometimes after that healing has happened, the brain isn't aware that that's fixed. And you'll continue to use that altered gait when you could be not limping anymore. Like, that's sort of a gross example. But the same happens with neck and back injuries. When something's hurt and you come in crooked or antalgic, it's your body trying to splint and prevent motion in an injured area. Once we get the pain gone and restore that movement though, sometimes you need to go back intentionally and turn the switches to those muscles on. And that's what rehabilitative exercise is for. It's to ensure that the motor patterns or like the background machinery that runs your muscles as you bend and move and twist is all happening in a well-coordinated way. So if you have spinal muscle imbalances or motor deficits as you move, you're more likely to re-injure those areas because you're functioning in a suboptimal, inefficient way, okay? The next thing is any sort of level of increased inflammation in the body is going to blunt and impair your healing response, okay? I know I said earlier that inflammation is the first step in healing, and it is. It's important. If we didn't have inflammation, if we got a cut that was deep, it would never stop bleeding. We would bleed out and die. We have to have inflammation. But when we have inflammation gone haywire, or we have a constant level of inflammation in the body, it doesn't take much to trigger those nociceptor nerves to fire. So inflammation is basically another chemical soup that exists inside our body on the alert for disaster, right? So think of inflammation as like the signals that call 911 to get your body's first responders going. If your body is always sending out some of those chemicals signaling that it's under stress or strain, it like I said, it doesn't take a lot more than to tip the threshold and fire off those nociceptors. So I'm reading my notes, and I said when the body gets used to being on a state of high alert, it's really quick to transmit that there's an injury to the brain. And I said it's like having a little neighborhood busybody firing up the next door app to complain that there's a barking dog or suspicious car or an unknown person walking through the neighborhood, right? Like, we've all seen that. Most of those times, it's not a concern. It's not something that's harmful. But if you're on high alert, it's really easy then to like trigger and overreact to those stimuli. Same thing happens in the body, okay? So now I want to complicate things even a little bit further and talk about what happens when a fresh injury continues to recur. Well, that chronic stress alters the way that the body works, and that pain can become chronic, right? So we've all heard about chronic pain. Well, what's chronic pain? Chronic pain is basically any pain that goes on for an extended period of time. And once you have worn that pathway in your body between firing that nociceptor, transmitting the signal up to the brain saying, ouch, that hurts, you get better at it. The body gets better and better at what it practices. So the more times that you have a recurrent episode of an injury, the less work it takes to fire that nociceptor and get that whole cycle going, right? So it's kind of a quirk of our physiology, just like if when I was in fifth grade band and I played the French horn, the more that I practiced in between lessons, the better that my fingers got at playing the music. The better that you practice having an injury or an irritation in your body, the quicker the brain is to pick up on that and to emit pain signals to you. So what are we supposed to do, right? It kind of seems like a catch-22. Well, most of the traditional treatments that are out there for back and neck pain really target or the efforts at reducing that initial or acute flare-up of pain. Chiropractic adjustments improve mobility. They restore better motion in the joints, and they fire the nervous system in efforts to decrease that signaling of damage in a joint. They also can interrupt the transmission of signals that go up to the brain, thereby decreasing some pain. Okay? Physical therapy is there to improve mobility and to restore and rehabilitate those dysfunctional motor patterns to increase stability so that you get less wear and tear in the joint. Medications tend to work around the idea of relaxing the muscles or decreasing inflammation or calming the nerves to decrease pain. So most of these treatments, like any other solution to a problem, have their limits to where they're successful, okay? things that limit the effectiveness of those kinds of treatments are not taking the time to rest or allow for appropriate recovery, not finding ways to decrease your repetitive wear and tear or to decrease the strain that you're building up in your body, not supporting your body by supplying it with what it needs via nutritious food or supplementation to support repair, or being exposed to high levels of stress that push the nervous system more towards the fight or flight response of your nervous system, which is inherently away from the rest, repair, restore, recover part of your nervous system, okay? So basically, if we want to feel better, we need to stop doing the things that promote that ongoing injury and prevent it from healing, and start doing the things that do support us in healing and recovery.